Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today, we are diving into something truly mind-bending from the ancient text known as T0316V05. Now, when most people read descriptions of the Buddha's physical form in classical texts, they tend to just brush them off as mystical poetry or some kind of supernatural mythology. But today, we're looking at this through a totally different lens. We're going to see how this text actually outlines a rigorous, mathematically precise system of biology and physics, one driven entirely by karma. We're going to find out that the Buddha's form isn't magic at all. It's actually the most rigorous display of cause and effect ever recorded. Here is how we're going to break this all down today. First, the anatomy of karmic history. Then, two fascinating case studies on the Crown Protuberance and the pure melody. After that, we'll get into the science of cause and effect, and finally, the inconceivable form. All right, let's jump right into part one, the anatomy of karmic history. To really grasp the reality of the Buddha's form, we have to set up a foundational hypothesis. The body described in these texts isn't the result of some divine, unexplainable magic. Instead, it's an intricate, highly calibrated output of intentional actions spanning vast stretches of time. So we really need to redefine the word karma based on what this text is actually telling us. Go ahead and forget that modern, kind of mystical idea of cosmic payback. Here, karma is presented as a strictly observable system of cause and effect. Think of it like a biological ledger. Eons of rigorous intentional actions, things like unbroken patience, perfect charity, profound focus. These are perfectly encoded into precise physiological traits. The text gives us this absolutely stunning metaphor for how this biological ledger operates. It says the Buddha's body is like a great round mirror reflecting all forms, like the clear water reflecting the moon. The idea here is that the body has become so flawlessly pure from accumulated merit that it literally acts as a perfect mirror. It's not hiding a single thing. It's simply reflecting the absolute totality of past virtuous actions right there in physical space. And this brilliantly illustrates the exact mechanics at play. It's a literal input-to-output process. Step 1 is the input, eons of intentional action and merit accumulation. Step 2 is the processing phase, a complete purification of all ordinary biological impurities. The text even specifically notes, leaving behind standard flesh, blood, and bone. And finally, step 3 is the output, the physical encoding into 32 distinct, extraordinary marks. Let's move on to part 2, our first case study, the Crown Protuberance. To see exactly how this encoding works in reality, let's look at the unseen Crown Protuberance, which is known in the ancient terminology as the unshakeable. There is a stark contrast happening here. Ordinary human optics, right, they're bound by physical light, totally limited to mundane forms. But the Buddha's Crown Protuberance is explicitly described as surpassing the visual realm altogether. It actually breaks the bounds of standard optical physics because of the sheer concentrated density of wisdom it encodes. It literally cannot be fully perceived by ordinary human sight. When you break down the specific raw data points of this trait from the text, you realize it completely transcends standard biology. It's self-luminous, it's flawlessly pure. As we mentioned, it isn't made of ordinary physical elements. It quite literally exceeds the boundaries of what our visual receptors can even process. So this isn't just some physical anomaly. It's the direct energetic output of eons of unbroken meditative focus and discipline. The sheer volume of that massive input fundamentally rewrites the output of the crown. Now for part 3, our second case study, the pure melody. Shifting our focus away from the Buddha's physical optics, let's look at his hyper-calibrated acoustics. And I want you to burn this exact number into your mind, 60. The text specifies that there are exactly 60 types of pure melody in the Buddha's voice. This really highlights the incredibly calculated, hyper-specific nature of this acoustic engineering. We're talking about an entire spectrum of sound designed to perfectly translate to infinite beings simultaneously. If we map out how these acoustic profiles function, it is all strict cause and effect. Take the ocean tide or cloud thunder sound, for example. This is the karmic output of boundless compassion and power, and its direct effect is to instantly command attention while calming the listener's mind. Then you've got the subtle, beautiful sound of the Kalavinka bird. That's the result of perfected patience and gentleness, and it's engineered to create spontaneous joy without causing any listener fatigue. Or take the lion's roar, which is the output of supreme confidence, perfectly tuned to eradicate ignorance and fear. Every single frequency is a highly engineered output that triggers a precise psychological response. So what is the ultimate function of all 60 of these acoustic profiles working together? Well, the text tells us that this pure melody entirely bypasses all language barriers. Whether you're human, celestial, or anything else, and no matter your level of intellect, you hear the message in your own language, perfectly tailored to your understanding, all at the exact same time. It's an acoustic manifestation of boundless communication. Honestly, think of it as the ultimate flawless sci-fi universal translator, except it's powered entirely by compassion and wisdom, and you don't even need an earpiece.
All right, moving to part 4, the science of cause and effect.
You have to wonder, how do you possibly generate these miraculous-seeming biological and acoustic outputs? We really have to analyze the immense scale of the input required here. The text gives us this vivid, visceral example of the extreme data input required. It says, guarding precepts like a yak cherishes its tail, sacrificing body and life over boundless eons without resentment. Just for some quick context, it was an ancient belief that a yak would literally rather die than lose a single hair of its tail. This represents an almost incomprehensible level of discipline, sacrifice, and pure intentionality over millions of lifetimes. That is the raw data being fed into the karmic ledger. To truly wrap our heads around the massive scale of this input-to-output conversion, the text uses a mathematical comparison regarding light. Imagine taking the combined light of our ordinary sun and moon and then adding the blazing light of the highest devas, or celestial beings. Even all of that put together doesn't equal a fraction of the light emitted from just one single pore of the Buddha's encoded body. The scale of the cause, those boundless eons of sacrifice, generates an effect that mathematically dwarfs the baseline physics of the known universe. Which brings us to our final section, Part 5, the inconceivable form. So what does this highly analytical, data-driven view mean for our ultimate understanding of the text? Let's summarize the core thesis here. First, the physical body is absolutely not a starting point. It is a final, highly refined output. Second, form is an infallible physical archive of all past actions. Nothing is lost, every single thing is encoded. Third, what our ordinary minds perceive as magic, like an unseen crown or a voice that magically translates itself, is simply the science of cause and effect scaled up to infinity. The Buddha's awe-inspiring form is, at the end of the day, the ultimate mirror reflecting perfect intentionality. It's an absolutely awe-inspiring concept, right? It totally shifts how we read and interpret these ancient texts. So, I want to leave you with this final provocative thought to ponder today. If your own body instantly encoded and displayed the exact karmic history of every single intentional action you've ever taken, what would it look like? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning the mechanics of the universe.